Hi, this is Mr. Lindeman, and what I want to do is quickly review constants, controls, and variables and how those apply in an experiment. This seems to be a trouble spot for a number of students, and so let's do an example, and maybe that will help. Let's say that we're going to do an experiment to find out if weight affects how fast a skateboard can go. And so let's label our skateboards. We'll just label them A, B, and C. A, the other C. And let's say that with skateboard A, that we are going to put it on a hill, and let's not put any weight on it. Let's say no weight. And let's say that we have friends in the right place, and so we're going to borrow a radar gun, and that way we can measure the speed without having to do a lot of excess effort. And then let's take our second skateboard B, and let's add 10 pounds of weight to skateboard B. And we're going to do like skateboard A, and we're going to measure its speed also. And then we'll take skateboard C, and instead of 10 pounds, let's make it 100 pounds. And again, we're going to measure the speed of that skateboard also. So what we want to do first is take a look at some things that we want to keep the same in our experiment. Now those things that we want to keep the same, those are called constants. Those are factors that you want to keep the same in our three trials, A, B, and C. When we do this, these are things that we want to keep the same. For instance, it would be very helpful if we used the same skateboard. It would be helpful if we used the same like the same hill. They would have the same starting place, say starting line, and they would also need the same finish line. So they're all traveling the same distance. Since we said we were going to use a radar gun, I mean, we could really go crazy with this and say, yeah, we're going to use the same radar gun to measure the speed of the skateboards. And there's probably other things we could think of, like, the same weather conditions. So we would like to do it all the same day and not on different days where it might be windy or something like that. We don't want any of that to affect our experiment. And so all of these are constants, things that we want to keep the same for trial A and trial B and trial C. Now, what we want to do next is identify which one of these is our control. Now, a control is a standard for comparison. It's what we use to compare with in our experiment. It's the one trial that we're going to compare the other trials to see if a difference, if something different happened. And so in this case, in this scenario, A is going to be our control. And I intended that to be the case, because it has no weight. So we can see how does the skateboard run on its own without anything on it. Then we can compare this one that has 10 pounds to this one, see if it makes a difference. Or this one that has 100 pounds, and see if that makes a difference. And so we can compare B and C to A to see if it makes a difference. And so this is our control. Let's change that to red. A is our control in our experiment. Now that leaves our variables, our independent and dependent variables. Now, for me, the way I think about it is I ask myself, what is being measured in the experiment? Sometimes it's easy to spot, sometimes it's not. but a lot of times it is easy to spot. And what's being measured in the experiment is speed. We're measuring the speed of the skateboards, right? And so speed is going to be our dependent variable. Speed is our dependent variable. Whatever you're measuring in your experiment is probably going to be your dependent variable. Now that leaves the independent variable, and I save it for last because sometimes it's often the most difficult thing to identify. There's two ways to figure out what it is. In this case, I know that speed is my dependent variable. It's what I'm measuring. And so I'll ask myself, what do I think is going to influence or affect the speed? Well, I think it's the weight, right? The weight. That's not how you spell weight. I think the weight is going to affect the speed of the skateboards, and so weight is the independent variable. We know that weight is the independent variable because the speed depends on the weight. At least we think it does. So that's another way to identify it. Another way to identify it is we're keeping everything the same in trial A, B, and C. We have all these constants. We're trying to keep everything the same except for one thing. What is the one thing that we're changing in trials A, B, and C? And that is the weight. And that's another clue on what your independent variable is. The weight is the only thing that we're changing, and so weight is the independent variable. I hope this helps you figure out more or understand more about how constants, independent and dependent variables, and a control all play a part in a good experiment.